Jeff, thank you for the fine introduction. And yes, yeah, beautiful. And thank you for the fine conference. It's a little bit weird, but a lot of great information, a lot of great discussion. But the stuff that stuck in my head was 3 comments: dude rooms, creepy business centers, and meatheads from the Interior Design Conference. It just like lodged in my head, like, so it was good. It was interesting. It's probably a description of me. But anyways, we are going to have this production in 3 ways. I'm going to do a quick introduction of why modular is here to stay. Then our 2 fine panelists are going to describe themselves. Christian, who has developed the RISE modular plant, Lawrence, who has taken a great gamble and has made it successful with a lot of credit to himself and made this work, and Jeff Schoeneck, who is leading efforts at Cunningham Architecture for modular development. So you have 2 pioneers here truly that are putting this together, and you guys should be proud of them for us, because a lot of risk and a lot of work in this business has made it happen. But first, if we could just key up the slides, I just want to run through a few slides, really talk about this is real. It's not a fantasy anymore. It's not a theory anymore. The stuff's getting built, and it's definitely part of our industry and part of the multifamily production now. And it's not a distant dream, but it's direct reality. And there's a multitude of projects being built. And if it doesn't go up, we can just jump in. I'll see if they're can get it loaded. Otherwise, I can do the birds in hand kind of thing and keep everyone all entertained. But the idea is that this is happening, and there's multiple projects now being built in the Twin Cities. And the percentage is growing every year, and it's growing rapidly. And it's what you heard from the previous panelists of the shortage. So I'm going to go through these very quickly. So just rip through them. This is Elvira, Ackerberg. Mike Munson was going to be here. Probably when he heard I was moderating, he probably got really busy. This is built, and it's up and running, and it's under construction. Occupancy is not that far away. 7 stories, all modular, 192 units. So just roll through them. Next. And that's just a picture of it under construction. Get next, please. This is another one in Minneapolis, Glenwood. RISE is a partner. Again, this is going to be built. Another one in construction. 7-story structure. Again, next, please. This is built. Mod 42, South Minneapolis and 42nd, occupied already. All modular. Next, please. This is up in Stinson. Is under construction. Another modular project. Next, please. Interior, next. So it shows the interiors are the same as everyone else's. This is St. Michael, will be under construction, suburban development. Next, please. Another view of that. View of the interiors. You can see there's no difference between modular or traditional construction. Turns out it goes together. Next, please. Another one, South Minneapolis, Bloomington at 26, 6-story structure. Next. This one's important. This is MPHA, Minneapolis Public Housing Agency. They've now bought into modular. When the public agencies start getting involved, it becomes very real. It's no longer the brave and the few. The public agency is using this to build scatter site faster and more effective. And this is images of that. Next, please. Next is more of the scatter site projects. Additional on that, there's like, I can't remember, like 68 units and 38 sites. This is Africa. We're developing modular out there also, and in California, in Berkeley. That's occurring in terms of panelization and steel modules. So you can see the modularization industry is not only a local phenomenon, but both nationally and international. Next, please. There's at the end. Nope, just another view of Africa. And another view of different systems. These are concrete SIPS panels, another methodology between wood, metal, and again, a combination of SIPS panels. So now what I'd like to do is have our panelists really tell their story and talk about how they got in industry, their successes and so forth. So I want to let them introduce themselves really talk about their background and process. So Christian, I'll let you have the honors first. If you could jump in and just really talk about how you got in industry, how it happened and so forth. And then Jeff, you can follow. So thank you.
Thanks, Dean. So my name is Christian Lawrence, founder and CEO of Rise Modular. We have 3 divisions: Rise Modular, Rise Construction, and Rise Development. Got into real estate about 4 or 5 years ago and quickly realized construction costs were outpacing rent and wages. And this was a challenge for the industry and a challenge for society to solve. Big believer that technology can play a big role in solving that problem. And a big aspect of it is labor availability. Those in the trades are getting almost 1 year older on average every year, and that's not sustainable. And so we really need to do something about that. And modular is one of many tools that should be used both locally, regionally, and nationally to address this problem. So I originally just wanted to build a project this way, but couldn't find a supplier in the Midwest that could do a large scale commercial multifamily project. So I decided to do a bunch of research, validate the market opportunity, and start executing the business plan. So we started manufacturing about 14 months ago on the Mod 42 project that Dean showed. It was our sort of proof of concept 30 unit project. It is now fully leased. I think 29 out of 30 units are leased, above pro forma, performing really well. We're selling it right now, and it's going to turn out to be a great project as a proof of concept. And also, most importantly, financially, it's going to make money. And so that's really important. Delivered it much faster and more efficiently than would be if it were stick built. So that was a great success and really helpful to the market to be able to touch and feel and see a real project rather than just renderings and ideas. Then we tackled a much larger one with Dean and Ackerberg, building the Alvera, the 192 unit project that Dean showed. We're really excited about that one. That one is fully stacked, so to speak, and exterior cladding is going on right now. So if you drive to St. Paul, swing by West 7th Street and check it out. It's a really neat project. Will be one of the more complicated modular projects ever built in North America. So we're really proud of the team on that one. And then we have several others in the works. We've got the Stinson project, which starts getting stacked here in a couple of weeks. And then St. Michael, 82 units, which we closed on yesterday. And after that, the Glenwood project. And then we're working on a 200 unit project with Jeff and Cunningham and Edina. And so we've got a pretty full pipeline over the next 12 or so months. And several more in the works for the balance of 2022. So modular is certainly here to stay, and we're proving it's effective, and it's really exciting. And there's frankly so much demand that we're starting to look at expanding into different regions of the country. So we're really thrilled and proud of the team and our great partners like DJR and Cunningham. And so thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jeff.
Great, thanks, Dean. Jeff Schoeneck, and I'm with Cunningham. I am the executive director of our Live Studio, and our Live Studio is active in 4 of our 6 locations. So we're active in Los Angeles, Phoenix, Denver, and Minneapolis. And we do projects Midwest to West Coast predominantly, and a little bit into the Southeast of the United States. So we're pretty active in all sectors: student living, senior living, apartments, condominiums, as well as supportive and affordable housing in all of those areas. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story, a little bit of background, and hopefully it doesn't sound like an infomercial. I want to give you a little bit of insight about the design perspective of where we're going as a company and why we're going there. I think it speaks to why modular is a really important element in the world, another tool for us to utilize. 3 years ago, we turned 50 as a firm. And when we did that, our CEO spent a fair bit of time contemplating what he called the 2068 plan. So think the next 50 years. And it was a little bit of a study of current state. And as Christian mentioned, with the aging construction industry, being one of those factors. There's also factors in terms of data and how fast technology has shifted the way that we think about the world. And it's referred to in circles as sort of the doubling effect. If you've ever seen the bell curve of development, it is very slow over hundreds of years. In the last 30, 40, 50 years, it has exponentially grown. And so the rate of change that we experience in all sectors, except for AEC maybe, is exponential, and it's increasing every year. So what does that mean? It means with an aging AEC industry and very traditional methods of delivering all of these projects that we're all talking about, there's a gap that's forming, and we see it in the affordable housing market. We've heard it several times today. It's increasingly separating from the demand and the supply. We can't keep up with it, let alone market rate, let alone student, you name it. There's demand across the country. And what we do today, doing that more, will not get us there, right? Or harder or faster is not going to actually yield those results. So as a firm, we've spent a fair bit of time and investment with some folks, some consulting folks in Silicon Valley, San Jose area, touring facilities, looking at technologies, looking at burgeoning ideas that are coming out. And as we don't solve that problem around this table, or are slow to solve that problem around this table, other companies like Rise and other companies around the country are solving this problem. It's generally coming from VC. There's a lot of money backing what's the solutions that will come down the pike to help us better understand how to deliver the kind of product that we're all talking about in the amount of time that we're talking about, with the costs in mind that we're all talking about here. So I think there's a big gap, and as a firm, we've recognized that it's caused us to think differently about our organization. And so we've reorganized our company around the idea that technology will shape how we deliver projects across the country, whether it's multifamily, healthcare, workplace, you name it, hospitality. It is impacting our business, and we're seeing it day after day. And so we have our 5 key studios that look at market expertise, and we've added leadership in our team that looks at nothing but driving innovation and technology into the design across all of those studios, and how that disrupts the channel. And so as we've developed business planning over the last couple of years, we're thinking about things like how to be agile in the process of delivering this, because simply changing the technology or the tool doesn't necessarily get you there. It affects a whole ecosystem. And so we refer to that as a technology ecosystem of, think of the AEC industry and how it's been designed and built and delivered and operated and asset managed over time. That's all disrupted. We've heard about prop tech and contech, all these different technologies are infused in what we do today that weren't there before, and it continues to evolve, and it needs to continue to evolve at rates that we can catch up. So we're very focused on understanding technologies like modular housing, modular in full units, as is the Rise model, components, panelization, exterior facades, interior panelization, smaller components with toilets and kitchens and prefabricated pieces like that. But there is this massive shift that we see and have seen in spades in the last 2 to 3 years. The number of inquiries around modular across the country has grown exponentially. And it's pretty rare for us to not have that conversation with developers across the country day 1 versus day 10 when there's a cost problem or a speed problem. It's part of the dialogue. And it is, again, we've got a project with Christian and Solomon Real Estate at Pentagon Village, and 200 units there that's in design at the moment. We've got 600 units out in Burbank, California. It's affordable housing project there. 3 different sites, 200 unit buildings, also contemplating modular, designed around modular construction. And we've got a handful of others that are currently in early conceptual phases that will be proceeding toward the modular space. So it's a growing trend, and it's growing at that doubling speed, I would say. So committed, obligated, compelled, I'm not sure what we are, but we're going there because it's taking us there, and the world's got to go there. We're not going to get there.
Thank you. So what you're hearing is some of the early pioneers, DJR, Cunningham, Rise Modular, but an industry that's growing incredibly fast. Before, if you think about the history, you used to have just stick. Then we had panelized, and now we have modular. So now I have another tool to work with within putting together multifamily, starting to deal with housing crisis, the issues of affordability and all that. And that's why we got involved, how to build more housing better, faster, yet less expensive. And that's what really sort of drove our charge industry, and credit to these two that have sort of joined. So we're not so much alone in this frontier, but now many people are starting to come on board. So now we're going to enter the third part of our presentation, which is a discussion. Feel free to ask questions, go through this, interrupt us. Don't worry about that. This is part where we want to have a discussion back and forth to learn about the industry and so forth. So the first question I put forward, and we're each going to answer because we lost Mike Munson, so I have to answer my own question. Just a lovely thought. But the idea is that first question is the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want each of us to say what is great about modular, the bad experience, because we got to know this is an industry serious. We talk about that and we can learn from our mistakes and experiences, and the ugly, something you never want to see happen again. So I know it's a tough question off the beginning, but I think it's a good one to answer all those three components. So I'll learn from each other and develop industry. So whoever wants to start, please do on that.
Well, fortunately, I don't have many bad and ugly experiences. Otherwise, I wouldn't still be here. A few things, a few comments that makes me think of is you really have to commit to modular sooner in the process. The sooner you commit to it, the more efficient the design can be for the system. If you try to modularize a project, which a lot of ours have been out of necessity, it's not as efficient cost-wise as it could be if it was developed, designed from the ground up with the modular system in mind. There can't think of an example off the top of my head, but there's a lot of systems in this world where you wouldn't possibly implement that after the fact. You design for the system. And so that's key. You got to be all in and, maximize the system. Another thing is, design choices. This is where it can get bad and ugly, particularly with the supply chain dynamics we're facing right now. You have to make decisions sooner in the process. And we've gotten into some, challenges where a decision is not made on a light fixture, on a door, on a window, on whatever finish. And then it's tough to get it in on time. And so that's a challenge, and you got to get it in sooner. The good is when everyone, all the stakeholders, the architect, interior designers, engineers are all on board, they're all collaborating and designing for the system very intentionally from the get-go. So that'll pass to Jeff.
Sure. So I think there's a number of good things that come out of this. There is a quality control issue of manufacturing versus infill construction that we like. That idea. There's the regenerative design side, which sustainability and how that gets put together, waste control, some of the things that happen inside of the factory that are really advantageous, are good for the environment, also just good for cost control, and some of those factors that I think go on in traditional construction. The bad and the ugly, I would say the challenges, I would call them more challenges because to Christian's point, this is a paradigm shift a bit. You can't deliver the product in the same way you would a stick-built product. Your code compliance pathway is different. Your systems procurement is different. We're talking about the difficulty of product at this point in general. And in this case with modular, that procurement schedule gets pulled up a bit in the process. You overlap phases a little bit. So you have to be attuned to not only documenting the building, but you're also bringing in the submittal phase of the construction. So you're overlapping how those pieces are sequenced. And it's really a different approach. So when we sat down with the RISE team to look at Pentagon, we did a pull plan session together. And I think this is maybe one of the really positive things that happens is you need to be integrated in these projects. Your partners have to be integrated day one in the process. And it needs to be mapped out. It needs to be understood because it's not the same pathway to completion as a traditional stick-built product. And I think finding partners in that at this point in the game, because it is early in the modular life across the country, it's difficult to find partners who have been here and have been engaged on the modular side. So our structural engineers, our mechanical engineers, acousticians, everybody who has to weigh into that model into the design of that building is learning this process. So it's a very different shift than simply a construction type. And I think that was maybe a little bit surprising at first, but as we got into it, it just became natural that you really have to define process earlier and make those decisions efficiently and effectively. And when that happens, it's pretty seamless, but it requires an integrated approach in a way that I don't think we always get to in traditional design and construction.
All right, now I get to go. I'll start with the good, and I'll call out certain areas of the good which people don't think of. One is the employees in the construction industry. What modular does is provide consistency of work. And as you know, in the construction industry, most subcontractors survive job to job. And in the nature of the work just tends to be dangerous because you're climbing, crawling, scrolling around, putting these buildings together in great heights, difficult winter conditions, and all those issues. And a little construction I've done in my house, I got worn out pretty quick. So just physically, it just takes a toll on people. And there is a sacrifice of being a construction worker because it is hard. And as you know, unfortunately, it's a dangerous work. So it comes with a lot of risk inherent in the process. The one thing, and I use Christian's plant for example, is they all work in a warehouse, egometric, meaning they have tables they work on. So I'm bending over crawling because everything's built on the ground plane. So all the units put together in that situation. And then you're not dealing with the hazards of weather, which we know can be quite dramatic up here between heat and cold and rain and wind and all the other good stuff that comes with it. So now you've created a working environment that's safe, a work environment that is healthy because of the condition you work with, but also consistent. The idea is that when you're employed in a modular factory, you're employed ongoing. So the stream of work is constant. Think of car production. You can make a career out of it as opposed to short-term gigs, framing a project, doing this and doing that. So it really has changed the nature of construction, actually allows a lot more people to participate. It's not just a matter of strength anymore. And so it allows open up between women and people with disabilities and everything else because of the condition of it. It creates a far more, what I call equality, egalitarian work environment that's consistent. So that is probably a very good, which most people have overlooked, because talk about time savings and speed and environmental and all those issues, which are all true. But that is a very key aspect. The other thing from, and I'll use Avera for example, the buildings are stronger because modules are made to be hauled around on 4 points. Those units have to be extremely well engineered and built. So when you put these buildings together and you connect all the boxes together, you're not dealing with shear issues and all those crushing and racking and things like that that happens in traditional construction. You don't need gypcrete anymore because you get the insulation built into the units and the buildings are stiff. So it tends to speed the construction and it really aid in that process and really help tremendously in that deal. So you have a safer work environment, a more consistent work of a better quality building, along with ideas can be a little faster because your foundation can happen at the same time your upper floors happen. While your foundation is going, the units being built in Owatonna. When the foundation is done, the units are delivered. So instead of sequential A to B to C to D, A and C happen at the same time to meet at B and get your building up. So there is a savings of time, thus you get to market faster. Big deal, big opportunity, especially in this marketplace. Get the units out faster, it starts answering the 150,000 unit shortage that was mentioned in the earlier panels. Really pans out and is really starting to prove itself between Vera and the other projects that we just showed and what Jeff is doing. So it's happening. But like any new technology, there's issues. So I want to be upfront about that too, the bad. Jeff alluded to it. Christian alluded to it. It's learning a new language as an architect. We used to draw, give it to a contractor and build it. If I screwed stuff up in the field, we adjust some studs and move this around and say, yeah, we can work it out. The unit looked too small. We move a wall in a bedroom and call it good. Modular, you cannot do that. It's like engineering this phone. It all has to be thought of up front. Every piece, component, design, fixture, interiors, and so forth. So you have to be very deliberate on how you put it together, the components you do up front, and you have to visualize it for the owner because you can't just build it, see it in rough studs and say, what do you think? You make sense because once you go in production, you're in production and putting these together. So the idea is that you have to be very thoughtful from the start in putting it together and have all your details, all your components worked out up front. And we have made mistakes on the line and adjusted it. And thank God we've picked up on them because it multiplies, because you're doing production many units. If you're off on a window, a sill detail, the mistake could be made over and over again. So that upfront work is really critical. Now, what's good about it? Change orders disappear because you put so much intensity in the front end. That's scrubbed out of the system. So the price is a price, and you're not dealing with all kinds of field requests, architects, RFIs, field instructions. Gets cleaned out of the system. So if the time in front really helps and really gets the project efficient and saves the cost. There's always a plus minus that comes with this. The ugly, and Christian's alluded to this, is modular is very supply chain dependent. You need to aggregate materials and go in production. And if your supply chain breaks down, much like you heard about Detroit not having the chips, thus they had to shut down factories, that's a vulnerability in the system. And that's something that both of them refer to have to be dealt with. And that can get really ugly in terms of delaying projects. And so what we learned in this process, because as we went into modular in the beginning, eyes wide open, we didn't think about, didn't know that the US supply chain would collapse on itself, which was a great education. So we had to learn alternate methods, alternate orders, alternate shipping, aggregating Band-Aids and suspenders and all that kind of stuff to work through it because it's critical in that basis. And that's part of the rapid change that's occurred in this nature and the factor. So that I will sort of put is the ugly part of it that occurs in that nature. But any new industry needs, work through this and needs opportunity because it's a necessity. Jeff outlined it. We've been building our buildings the same for decades. And the housing gap's been growing greater and the intensity of the demand keeps growing greater. And now we're paying the price by rents escalating. Yes, there's some pockets like down to Minneapolis, but generally you're seeing the rents escalate very quickly. And you're seeing the house short numbers go greater. So solutions must occur. These two are starting that process. We've started that process to do it. The industry is going to look at it because they'll start seeing the profitability of getting more units to the market and more developers coming on board with the system. So that's essentially the good, bad, and ugly. What I want to step into now, and Jeff, you opened up into it, and this is an important question because you started this thing, the change of process, the change of technology, the change of what's occurring, because this modular is a step in a process. Invention doesn't stop. Say, we got modular, we're good, and wash our hands. You keep evolving, you keep developing what's next, what has to happen in the future, what components come next, what's after modular, what's parts of modular make it better, and so forth. So I want to ask both of you, what do you see in terms of the invention, the technology change that's going to keep driving this industry and keep evolving us. And neither one of you can jump in first, but please elaborate on that because this is significant. This is not a frozen process. So please go ahead.
Sure, I'll jump on that. So as we look forward, we're looking at a lot of different data points and literally data, big data, and how that's imposing itself in the AEC industry. For the design folks out there that are working with BIM 360, you know that that runs through Autodesk. Autodesk has data of multiple buildings in this country. And they collect that data for reasons, and they'll use that reasons to continue to commodify some of the portions, create a commodity out of some of the portions of design that are coming down the pike. There's regulatory advancement that needs to happen for permitting to be done. So even when we finish projects in a timely way, we know it sits in regulatory cycles for, in some cases, 6 months. We've dealt with projects that are in regulatory circles for 2 to 3 years, and sometimes longer than that. So there's difficult portions of this technological ecosystem, this technology ecosystem that I referred to, that are informing the rest of what's happening in terms of advancement in design. So as we start to look forward into future technology, we're trying to look at the obstacles that are currently in that ecosystem. So one area is in our modeling that we do from a design perspective, we design the building in 3 dimensions. They're real components, they're data rich, and they have enormous capacity and potential. So now think about those VC companies taking technology and using that and leveraging that to create new cycles and new ways of innovating and disrupting the way we build buildings. And you have an opportunity for data to run a little bit amok. And so as a company, one of the things that we've done to try to help this cycle out is we've developed a software product called Concert VDC. We incubated that product with some consultants out of Silicon Valley again. And it's really intended to create authenticity in the data that's transferred. So as the modular industry evolves, we anticipate and expect additional automation that'll happen. That's a pretty tall task to get to, and it's a difficult task. Thousands and thousands of pieces of a building coming together have to be orchestrated carefully. But we see the companies evolving into an automated approach to that, which means that the data streams that we created from the design perspective have to be curated, protected, and handed further into the process than they've ever been handed. We're just not handing off drawings to a contractor and saying, build this building. As Dean alluded to earlier, it's a different process. We now have the ability to hand off that digital and share that digital data with subcontractors in the future. And that has to be protected. So the tool that we've created from a software perspective really is a blockchain tool that creates an authenticity and a certainty stamp of who owns that information. Because today insurance companies won't look at that. So it's a cycle in this technology ecosystem, and insurance, from the contractors, the subconsultants, the subcontractors, everybody's part of that. So the closer we come together and look at the same piece of clay in the middle of the table and use that to drive innovation, speed, time, cost, production, the closer you get to that, we're lacking those systems. So the development of those, that sort of the glue that holds all those pieces together, the string that connects those, we see those needing to evolve so that permitting and some of those other obstacles today are diminished. So that's in general where we see it heading.
Christian, I know you've been leading industries, so please
Sure,
jump in on what you're pulling together in this.
Yeah, the 2 big pieces are automation, and that goes with standardization, or what we prefer to call productization. And this is happening more quickly in California than it is here. But over time, both architecture firms and firms like myself are going to have to change. In the future, there's going to be, parametric design and generative design, and it's going to be much less, individual architects drafting something, in a 3D model. It's going to be more, I'd imagine in 50 years, you're going to have a lot more programmers, than you do, architects necessarily by training. And for me, we'll have more robots. And they go hand in hand, and it's both from the upfront design through the manufacturing process. 50 years from now, I think it's going to be largely AI-driven design, which will do the takeoff, it'll do the estimating, and it'll feed directly into the robotics in an automated factory, and then produces the project. Much like cars, you can go on your iPad, and go to Ford's website and pick an F-150 and pick your trim package and change your color and whatnot. And so that is, productization. Right now, developers want to put their own touch on stuff. We develop projects ourselves, and for better or worse, I've not replicated the same unit in any of my projects, even though it'd be much easier from a manufacturing standpoint. And I think that is, as much a, personal thing for developers as it is the market. Here, what we build in Edina versus what we build, in St. Michael versus what we build, in Minneapolis, it requires a different, unit mix and product. Whereas in California, a lot of the, modular startups, whether it's on the, design, automation end or the fabrication, they're more quickly going towards productization and just having one studio model, one bedroom model, one 2-bedroom model. There's no way I could sell developers on, you got 3 options, combine them how you want. We'll get there, and they're much more metro areas like Minneapolis, St. Paul, as there are like the Bay Area. And so we're in it for the long term. And so for right now, we're highly customizable. But over time, both the design aspect of it and the manufacturing aspect of it will get increasingly automated. And that comes with productization.
Study hard, otherwise we'll all be outdated on this. I mean, he's right in terms of evolution. In terms of our aspect, what we've been looking at is really 2 components. One is, it's like learning a language. And right now there's multiple languages out there. There is a language of wood modular. There's a language of steel modular that's out there. And there's a language of what it calls concrete SIPS panels. Those are the 3 we're working with right now, each with its own requirements, systems, details, methodology, and process. All have a place in the universe. It used to be that if we knew stick framing well, or what they call platform framing well, that was good enough. You could practice and detail your ability to put it together. Now, there's a lot of different languages out there, depending on the circumstance and location, it has to be learned. And it was alluded, Jeff meant, California, we're going to a bunch of stuff in California. That's primarily steel modular. Different language, different process, different thought. I mean, it has some of the same components that we talked about, but it's a different language in terms of details and process. The work in Africa we're doing is panels, SIPS, concrete SIPS panels, putting those together and then creating volumetric out of there because of their nature, their construction types, their how buildings are put together. That has its own method of details, connections, and so forth. And obviously working with Christian on the wood version on those aspects. And they're right in terms of, we used to think sequentially, the architect would create the drawing, the MEP would overlay their mechanical, structural, put their stuff in, and we crank it out the other end. We can't do that anymore. They have to work hand in hand, as Jeff was saying, Christian, simultaneously putting these buildings together because they're being created at the same time. And so now you have manufacturer, consultant, architect, and sometimes the manufacturer is a contractor or the contractor, all working in simulcast on the project at the same time. It's a big difference. It's what very different than I did for my first years in practice. I'm relearning everything again, and thank God there's people in the firm a lot smarter than me to do that. So it will change the industry. and it'll change the process. And this relationship between these groups are going to be much stronger. It's no longer, I draw the buildings, throw it on the bid market and see who shows up. That isn't going to survive a lot longer. It's going to be assemble the team of experts, assemble the contractor that's knowledgeable, the developer, the build and manufacture, all at the same time, working through the details. And what becomes really important with this, because I can't build it and change it like I used to. It's more like this phone. Everyone's got to understand every component of the phone ahead of time, every piece that they're contribute to it, and then assemble it in the factory and put it all together. Yes, go ahead.
Does that make the architectural fees less than, since you're just getting signed off on?
Yeah, we'll pay you to do the work.
I think,
It's a different language. Go ahead.
yeah,
Jeff.
well, just,
No. This is open question. So this is good. So,
you hit, I think you hit on a very important point.
Can you repeat the question for the online people?
so basically the question is, indeed, because it's so efficient and so automated, we won't need architectural fees anymore. Which I love that question.
In 50 years, yes.
Yeah, it's actually, but you are alluding to a change. I'll let Jeff jump in first.
You're not that far off. And it shouldn't, I wouldn't say it's fees going down. It's that you need the right channel partners at the table who are thinking about what matters about that building and its performance. And I think of in terms of design experience, the role of the design team is really to make sure that this building operates, functions, health, safety, welfare. Some of those pieces are going to come off. They're going to be commodity. So there's probably a portion that the design community is going to sort of render to the better process, to the stronger process, and it might be a diminishing field. It's a valuable question, and it's a very disruptive one. I think that's why, talking about in terms of a paradigm shift is important. It's not a different construction type, folks. This is a technology disruption that we are in the middle of, and we haven't felt it yet. The waters are getting warmer. We should be jumping up and thinking about the pot we're in, and we're not right now. We're just kind of slowly making our way to the side of the pool here. And I think this is a really good step on the modular front, and what we see with Rise and other developers and other manufacturers around the country creating product like this is extremely valuable to all of our success long term. So yeah, there's going to be give and take on both sides. But I think at the end of the day, you still have people living here, and you still have to understand what that means, how that feels. Somebody has to design those units, even if they are sort of proprietary. There's path here for different pathways for different people.
Yeah,
Will our
just
fees
to-
be
go
less?
ahead.
No, higher. Higher fees, less work, maybe something like that, higher
I
value
like that
proposition.
concept. Metric days, 3.2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it will eventually turn into a SaaS model where developers are going to pay, a monthly fee for access to software. And there's certainly, technology startups in the Bay Area and elsewhere that, are quite literally saying they're going to get rid of architects. I personally don't believe that. I just think the field is going to change. And me too, my company is going to have a lot more software engineers 5-10 years from now, and same with
Will
them.
too.
And so the field isn't going to be eliminated. It's just going to change as many industries and firms do over time.
These two give me great comfort. I want to crawl under the dais or nap and see if it goes away. But they're right. It's not that will become unnecessary. We have to change and evolve with it. We'll become more like orchestra leaders or band leaders, coordinating the consultants, coordinating the pieces, organizing these pieces and weaving the project together. The idea of just being a production architect will fade, but the idea of being an orchestra leader, a band leader, and putting this together is where this is heading. And so firms, we're not at that, change or perish point yet, but we see it coming, and it will be here. And it's going to cross industry. Architects is one piece, developers is another piece, construction another piece, that they're going to start evolving new construction methods, delivery process in order to survive, because the market's going to demand it by the pressures you heard on the previous panels. Jeff, go ahead, sorry.
All right. All right. So I had a question for you. So modular has been around for a long time, right? 10, 20, 30 years. What's different today about modular and why does it work today versus 10, 20, 30 years ago?
I'm going to answer that one first. I gave you, and then the others, I gave you a couple key words in terms of reputation. Think of 4 words: manufactured home and double wides. Modular didn't come from a really sweet beginning, and this was part of the experimentation. And there has been a lot of previous attempts at it, and some didn't do so well. And part of the problem, in my opinion, what started it, we started with manufactured homes. I think Kawasa Homes, the other developers, that's sort of where it came out of, where they built these cabins pre-made and they shipped them outside and dropped it on your foundation. The industry started to ask them, well, can you make a hotel or can you stack them? And they did, but they didn't realize all the intricacies that come with going from manufacturing single family homes to manufacturing multiple buildings. During the recession, I went to North Dakota to find work, all of us to help keep DJR going because of the tough period. And we found work and prospered out there and it carried us. And there was a lot of modular construction, a lot of bad modular construction because there was such a shortage of workers and the demand was so quick. They drove all these single family home manufacturers in the process of creating units. And they weren't insulated. They didn't wrap them. For example, one project was after witness on. They shipped these units from Minnesota. They didn't wrap them, so they were driven up in a rainstorm. Then they set them on site. It rained some more, and then they put them together and didn't protect the roof, and it rained some more. And then people moved in. The thing got moldy, and all the people had to leave. It's that kind of stuff out of ignorance that people didn't do the planning on it. Another hotel up there, you'd walk between modules, they didn't know how to stitch them together. So you go up and down over the stitches. So all that kind of stuff was out there, but that was all part of the experimentation because of it. What I call the new generation modular, it's being referenced here, and what Christian is doing is his premise started from doing multifamily from the get-go, not evolving from single family into multifamily. It's a big difference of thinking. It's a big difference of criteria. It's a big difference how you look at it. Those mistakes paved the way for today because it's looking back at the history, looking back at North Dakota, what's right, wrong, and different. I saw the needed knowledge of how it solved the labor problem, but I saw the mess it can be made if it's not handled right. So those reputations were baked in, and rightfully so, between manufactured homes and trailer trash and tornado bait, all that kind of stuff that got associated with it. Very real. But the next generation that's building off of it is now starting to show considerable success, and they're being occupied and being built at a shorter timetable and proving themselves off sort of the wreckage of the first generation of modules that occurred 20 years ago. So Jeff, your question is fair in terms of history, but your question is good in terms of what's coming up and the experience you learned. So
Let me
Christian,
jump
go
in.
ahead,
There's
please.
2 simple reasons why it's working today and it didn't work 30 years ago. The cost of stick building 30 years ago was substantially less than today. The average wage in the trades was substantially less than it is today. And so it's simple math. As stick built traditional construction has gotten more expensive, there's been more need to modularize or bring it into a factory. Much like cars, there used to be or airplanes or whatever, there used to be people that could build these things from scratch and build them in their garage and modify their cars. That's going away. And then the other aspect is technology on the A&E side. Having a single, ostensibly trailer home or double wide 2 of them, that's much easier to get right, with 2 boxes built independently, with paper drawings as they had, 30, 40 years ago. Now connecting, 150, 250 boxes, you really have to have the 3D modeling. I can't imagine doing what we are doing and connecting boxes 5 stories tall, with paper drawings 30 years ago. So it's technology and it's math with labor costs and traditional construction costs.
Jeff? No, I think you covered it.
Okay,
Thanks.
fair
Yeah.
enough. That point is very well taken on the basis. You've got questions. Yeah, let me stop talking and take questions.
See, how are the local building officials viewing this product since it's manufactured offsite?
You want to go first?
Yeah,
And then
but-
I'll go.
In Minnesota, it's state statute that the Department of Labor and Industry in St. Paul has jurisdiction over what is done in the plant. And the local municipality, be it Minneapolis, St. Paul, Edina, has jurisdiction over what is done in the field. They have reciprocity with the other states in the upper Midwest. And if we're shipping to Colorado or California or Texas, we'd hire a third party to fill that role in the plant and do the plan review and inspection. So it's really quite simple. In practice, you have to educate the city, as we're doing a 60% review, tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
3-hour meeting with Edina code officials tomorrow. And so it's educating them on what is being done, because you don't want to cause conflict of, pointing fingers, but really it's quite simple here in this state. And nationally, it's just an education process for those who haven't done it.
Education is huge. Minnesota is one of the best because they set up a special task force inspectors that inspect modular in his plant. So they sign off and everything as virtuous. But there is still turf battles between the local officials and the state and weaving of who's got jurisdiction, sort of like CSI, we're the FBI, we got jurisdiction. You still have some of that in the thinking. It's diminishing, but these first wave of projects had to work through it. But as we work through it, the code officials starting to know the roles and responsibilities. So it's getting better. But in the beginning, that all had to be worked through. But as each city does modular, Minneapolis has done one, obviously Edina, St. Michael, St. Paul, they're getting the education on it. They're seeing them occur, they're seeing them happen, and they're starting to learn the roles. They get much more comfortable with it. So the pioneering work's been done. It's much better than it was when we first started with this adventure a few years ago.